Hey, my name is Ron Bell. My art of recovery is tattooing and art.
Hey! How are ya? I'm good! Good to see you again. How was your day?
Good.
Good. You ready to do this thing?
First thing I want to know is, what was it like for you as a kid? Was it Ron? Was it Ronnie? Ronald? Did you have some nicknames?
When I was a kid, I was Little Ronnie. My dad was Ron. So my mom called me Little Ronnie. And I was pretty much the baby of 3 children, the only boy. My father really wasn't in the picture from the time he was out of the house by the time I was 3. He was out of Florida by the time I was 8. So it was pretty much me, my mom, and my 2 sisters, my whole childhood, and my grandmother, who was very close to us. So I was pretty young, so I didn't really know a lot about it at the time, but my father was severely abusive to my mother and my oldest sister in many different ways, and eventually my mom just kicked him out of the house, said, "Don't come back." We were pretty much the bad little punk rock skater kids. You know, my mom tried to keep me under control the best she could, but it kind of got out of control here and there. I think the one thing about my childhood that was difficult was when my father was not in the picture, I tried extremely hard to overachieve. So I was always the best at whatever I was doing, baseball, football.
When did you start creating art? You mentioned that in your teen years. How far back does art go for you?
My mother actually, probably before she passed, had picture drawings that I did probably when I was 5 or 6 of like dinosaurs and sharks and like all little space fights with like the little spaceships shooting little dot, lasers at each other and stuff. So I've always created as much as I could. I had a regular job. I worked in an environmental laboratory at one time. I fueled jets at the airport for a while, and like it was always like a job that was like 3 months quit, 3 months quit. Oh, okay, that job pays a little bit more, so I'll take that job. And then tattoo wise, I got laid off from my environmental laboratory job, and I ran into a friend from high school who said, "Oh, I'm a tattoo artist now." And I'm like, "You're full of crap. You're not a tattoo artist, whatever." So I went to the shop he said he worked at, and he worked there. And so I lived off my unemployment for 6 months and bought my equipment and learned how to tattoo. And that was 28 years ago. But as a commercial, like selling art, it's only been probably in my sobriety, so about 7.5 years that I've really focused on creating art for sale.
How involved is that? What, you just decided to become a tattoo artist? How does that work?
Well, I didn't really go through a conventional apprenticeship like they call them, where you learn I was kind of just thrown to the wolves, honestly. I pretty much hung out of the shop. I watched my friend tattoo. I learned the basics. Down the line, I would learn how to build a machine and how they ran and how they should run, and then just design flash, which is the stuff that you see on the walls in the old shops, not nowadays that much, but so I would just constantly draw and draw and draw and look at other people's art and create from that.
How do you practice tattooing? You just...
Well, now, yeah, nowadays
put
they
the gun to the skin?
Well, nowadays they make fake skins and stuff like that, but back in the day, I really tattooed myself the first time ever, and then had friends that were willing enough to let me practice on them. Yeah. When I first started painting real art, as I called it, and then I had to have multiple people tell me that tattooing is real art as well,
Yes.
because I felt, oh well. But I was trying to cater to like the Lakelanders or the Lakeland elite or whatever. So I would paint landmark paintings, like watercolors of like famous landmarks around town, and they would sell really fast.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh cool, that's awesome. But then Ellen would see like other things, like she saw my things at the punk rock flea market, and she's like, why the hell don't you paint this? Why isn't this at Art Crawl? Why do you only have Bach Tower at Art Crawl instead of this weird crazy tattoo art? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. And so she's encouraged me. About the last 2 years I've kind of said, screw that, and I'm gonna do what I want. So
yeah, love it. When you described your art as lowbrow street art, that struck a chord with me, and I want to know what you consider, what the definition of lowbrow.
Okay, I normally consider, from what I've read in definitions and what I've seen through the years of tattooing and the art that I've always liked, lowbrow art is kind of the art, like outsider art, like art that doesn't make it in the general populace of popularity in galleries.
Okay.
So art that's a little more subversive, a little more bawdy, a little more monsters and mayhem type thing, you know, hot rods. Like I'm a huge fan of Ed Roth and Von Dutch and Robert Williams and Robert Crumb and all these guys that were like the underground comic scene of the 60s, and they started that entire custom culture movement of what I consider to be lowbrow. A lot of people say it's straight out of California, but I think it's like it crosses over. You know, like I was heavily influenced in the 80s by skateboarding, which was based in California mostly from what we saw in the style and the generations and the artwork, like Jason Phillips. But a lot of these people, you know, I just really gravitated towards that art. Album cover art, pulp art, like I love the art on old Mad magazines or old pulp books and stuff, you know.
It was so interesting to me when you described your own art as lowbrow, because I just thought of that term prior to your educating me. I took that term as an offensive term years back. We commissioned Aaron to come in and design this sugar skull that had all of these elements of our Shakespeare show in it. Mm-hmm. And so he came into the class and sat with the class, and the students told him what they wanted and what the different elements stood for and everything, and really spent a long time thinking about this and, you know, plotting it out. So he finished the artwork, and it was just a couple days before the next deadline for the Lakelander, and I was thinking, I wanted to contact the Lakelander and say, hey, we're doing this show and we've got this custom work by Aaron Connolly, and I thought it might get us, you know, foot in the door, that we had this custom work and that the kids were so proud of and we had spent so much time on. So I sent it off to the parent who was doing the marketing at the school I was teaching at the time, and I sent it off to that person, and they not only did they miss the deadline on purpose, but it turned into this 2-week-long discussion over whether or not this sugar skull was appropriate to advertise our show. And in their argument against the artwork, they said it's lowbrow tattoo art, and not appropriate for the school. But then also, I was so offended over her using the term lowbrow to describe this art that was so customized, it was so extensively thought out, and it was amazing, and it was exactly what we asked for, and the relationship between the artist and the students, it was just, the whole experience was amazing. And then to have it, what I felt like was trashed by, you know, deeming it lowbrow tattoo art. I was so offended, and it was a terrible thing. It was a terrible situation. I ended up being allowed, thankfully the headmaster allowed me to use it for advertising that show, but it has always stuck in my craw, that lowbrow, you know, thing, that lowbrow term. And so when you so casually and confidently described your own artwork as lowbrow, I was like, wow, that must not mean what I think it means.
Right. Well, I mean, I think there is. I kind of have come to learn to embrace the stereotypes in life, I guess you could say, because, like, first off, a sugar skull isn't even tattoo art. It's actually Mexican art from the culture of Mexico for the Day of the Dead, which is All Saints Day, which, you know, so but like it was misappropriated by tattooing in the first place, and now it's everywhere. Yeah. And that's the funny thing to me is, like, you know, being a punk rock kid from the 80s and a little skater punk kid and dressing certain ways and liking certain cultures and being picked on for those things, and now all of that is mainstream popular society, you know, like we call them hipsters, and it's like y'all are grabbing things that were cool that y'all never thought, your parents didn't think were cool, you know, y'all picked on us for this stuff, and now you're gonna try to steal it all. So it's like, it's just funny to me because there's just so much of that goes on, and it's like, you know, it's like, so being lowbrow, I think, is kind of a badge of honor.
So you've mentioned several times about your addiction. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
When did that start?
I started drinking when I was 16 with my friends. It was a once every couple weekends kind of thing, you know, try to get a 12-pack of beer between 3 or 4 of us, and we did it a little, you know, here and there, buying it if we could or having someone buy it. There were times when my mom was kind of like the team mom. My mom was the mom that I'd rather y'all drink here than go out and drive. So she would kind of be an enabler way on before, you know, anything. But I think it was once I got older, we had talked earlier about me and my son, but like when I was a little kid, I was the golden child and everything was perfect. And as I got older, I wasn't always the best at what I wanted to be, and I had self-esteem issues, and so I would drink to be what I thought people wanted me to be. So although my friends, some of them still drink to this day that I know from high school, it got completely to the point where I could not control it. Now it took until I was like, it was probably unmanageable by the time I was in my mid-20s, but I didn't and then by the time I was 36, I was having surgery because I was full of fluid from something they call liver ascites, which is where your liver shuts down when you drink too much and you swell up with fluid because you're not passing it through your body. And then I quit for about a year then, or not quite a year, but close. But then I just went back to it. I didn't care. I wasn't happy with my life. Didn't care about anything, you know. I didn't know how to live sober at all. I didn't know how to be who like today. What you see right now is me, 100% me. I didn't know how to show that then, so I would just drink it away or push it down with alcohol and be whatever I thought you wanted me to be, the tough guy or whatever. And the funny thing is, getting sober, I realized that all my friends that have come back since I've gotten sober, that's not what they ever wanted me to be in the first place, and that's why they went away then, you know? So.
Yeah. You mentioned that you weren't happy with your life and you didn't care. Was there anything particular that happened around that time, or was it just gradually over?
I think there was some things like, you know, like regret and resentments toward my father when I was young, that he was never really in my life. He left Florida when I was 8, and then my grandmother passed when I was probably early 30s. I don't remember what year, but that was probably the kicker that put me over the edge, because she was like my father figure. She lived in our house. She taught me how to play baseball, like all the stuff my dad wasn't around to do. So yeah, that's where it kind of went off kilter big time. And then by then I was just to the point where I didn't know how to live sober at all. I couldn't function unless I drank something. I couldn't go to a job interview. I couldn't go to a concert. I couldn't be out in public unless I had tied one on and had at least a small buzz, because I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to like react to people. I didn't know. I was scared all the time. I was scared that people wouldn't like me for who I was. So I turned myself into something else.
Was it an anxiety, or was it just an insecurity?
I think it was a little bit of both, probably. I mean, it was severe anxiety from being completely insecure. Like, you know, like, oh, well, so-and-so don't like me, or what if I say this and everybody laughs at me, and, you know.
Yeah. It
just got worse and worse and worse. The end of the line was my sister and I were estranged and weren't seeing each other, and my mother had a stroke on Easter, and I was the person at home that was her healthcare provider, like her surrogate. And they said she wouldn't make it through the night, so she was in the hospital. My other sister said, do you want to invite so-and-so to come and see Mom? This may be her last night on earth. And I said, okay. So anyway, long story short, I led her back into, my mother went home with hospice. I let that sister be around me to take care of my mother. We got into an argument. The police were called. I was arrested for being around my sister. I kissed my mother goodbye in handcuffs for the last time I ever saw her. And I sat in jail for like 10 days until the judge said, well, this is silly sibling rivalry, but if she's at home, you can't go home. And so that was pretty much the breaking point. Plus, when I was in jail, I'm like looking at these guys that you would jokingly call like a bridge bum or haha drunkie, you know. And I was like, you're like 5 years away from being that guy. So it kind of hit home. So when I got out, when I was released that day, I actually went to see probation, and she said, what do you want to do? You can either go home, or you can either live on the streets and report to me every day, or figure something out, because you can't go home. So I said, what about rehab? And she said, I know a guy. So she called, who is now my sponsor, who is the intake coordinator at the Salvation Army in Tampa, and he got me in there. Like 2 weeks later, I stayed in a motel for 2 weeks until I got accepted into the program.
So that was
and my mother died during, like when I was waiting to get into the Salvation Army, my mom passed away. So.
And you didn't get to see her?
No. I saw her the last time when I got arrested.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine that. And then you went into rehab, so you were doing sobriety at the same time you were grieving your mother's death.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then my sister euthanized my 2 dogs when I was in rehab.
Ron, oh my gosh. What was rehab like?
Well, like at first, when people think of the Salvation Army, they think of downtown where all the homeless people go every night. It wasn't out there. It's in North Tampa, up at the store on Nebraska behind the actual flagship store on Nebraska, just north of Fletcher. But it was in-house treatment. You worked in the actual warehouse, taking in donations and sorting them to be placed in the stores. You were fed, you lived there, you went to church, you went to classes and meetings and all that kind of stuff. It was a 6-month graduation program. You could stay for a year. I stayed about 8 months. When I first got there, it was kind of sort of, oh well, I'm just gonna ride this out to make people happy, like I had done in the past. Like, oh, I'll just go to AA a couple times and then everybody will let me home. And then after my sister euthanized my dogs is when I was like, yeah, well, this is not cool, you know. So I wasn't sold on the faith aspect or the AA working for real. I was pretty cynical of it. But I start seeing these people in there, all these guys and all these people that work there, and it's like they're all so happy and all their shit's together. And like, you know, at least the people that work there, and don't get me wrong, everybody in recovery, some that you could fall 10 years down the road or you could fall 3 days into it. But for the most part, they all had their shit together, and they all said they cared, and they all genuinely seemed to give a crap.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wow, you know, like, what is it that these guys have that I don't have? And like, so I asked my sponsor Edwin to be my sponsor and help me out with this crap, with this step thing, whatever it was. And I think around the same time, I was like walking through the warehouse in the morning, going to my job. I fixed computers when I was there, and it's like, you know what? You're gonna be okay. Like, you're not going home. Your mom's gone, your dogs are gone. The only things that you had that you could use as an excuse to stay codependent to are gone. You have nothing to lose. So it's like, you're gonna be fine. And if you go to a halfway house, then you're gonna go to a halfway house. And if you never tattoo ever again, you'll never tattoo ever again. And it's gonna be taken care of by God, or, you know, I call God my higher power. It could be whatever anyone wants to call it. So I just felt it was, you know, and like, now Edwin is like kind of like me. He's quiet. He's kind of reserved. He's not like the big jock. I'm the workout guy or anything. So I gravitated towards him, and so he just helped me through the steps. And like, you know, people in recovery that ever do the steps kind of talk and joke that the 4 steps the biggest step, because that's where you kind of have to come with terms with your own bullshit. And like, once I could realize that no matter what happened, at the end of the day, it was my own problem and my own fault. It just started being better, you know? Yeah, my sister threw me in jail. But if I was sober, I would have never been foolish enough to be put in a situation to where that would have occurred. Yes, this girlfriend was a bad girlfriend, but if I was sober, I probably would have never been silly enough to even contemplate that being a good relationship. You know what I mean? So like, the alcohol was to blame and my choices were to blame. So just being in there and working the program, and I had, like I said, I had kind of tried to do it for others in the past, but I think I was finally at my rock bottom. It was like, if I don't fix this, I'm going to live on the streets or be dead or be in prison.
It was all you, only you, for you.
Yeah, it was for me. You know, like I tell my guys that I know nowadays, it's like, you have to do it for yourself. If you're doing it for somebody else, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
If you don't really want it, then it's just pointless. Yeah, and it's funny because like being sober, it's like I see people that come out of the woodwork in music and art that are sober, and it's like Slash has been sober for like 15 years or something like that. I didn't know that. I figured he drank all the time still, you know, because it's just that persona he gives off. Yeah. But it's like, no, he doesn't. Eminem's sober. Eminem's sponsor is Elton John, for crying out loud.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I think that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Because he would bash the gay community so bad in the past, and then like the person that helped him get sober is Elton John, for crying out loud.
First of all, you've been sober 7 years now.
Yeah.
May 9th?
May 9th of 2014, yeah.
Yeah. So, 7 years. Tell me what recovery has looked like for you and what it looks like today.
They say there's like a white light experience where once you get it, it just clicks and it's perfect. And I would never say it's perfect because life isn't perfect by any means, but once I got to a point where I was like done with it, and this is thanks to my sponsor and my counselor in rehab. Once I came to terms with everything that, like my counselor was like, write down everything you lost because of drinking, and not like sports cars or that hot girlfriend or whatever. What did you really lose? And I was like, I lost my self-will. I lost my ability to think for myself. I lost who I was. I lost my belief in myself. And like, I just kind of went at it full force. The beginning, first year was probably like, I hate alcohol. I hate it. I took every single like off my Facebook of any alcohol company that I liked. Like, I can't like Anheuser-Busch no more. I don't like Jack Daniels no more, you know. And like, then slowly, and I went to meetings on a kind of a regular basis. I've never been a huge, like, I have to be at meetings type person. My wife is very involved in our church, so when I moved out here, I became very involved in it as well. I was raised a Methodist before I walked away from it. We go to Methodist church, so it's like, boom, Methodist, all right, cool. You know? So, and Salvation is sort of offshoot of Methodism, so I thought that was funny that Salvation Army.
I was going to ask you, Christian is Salvation Army.
It's an actual Christian, it's an actual religion. But I thought it was just a military branch when I was younger. But
so did I.
Yeah.
Well, not even just when I was younger.
Right, yeah. But so you know, so most of my recovery today, at least, let's go. Like the beginning recovery was like, it's all me. I go to meetings sometimes. I hate alcohol for its horrible cursing mannerisms and what it does to the world. And then slowly, like a year or two in, it was like, yeah, you know, whatever. It's not alcohol's fault. It's my fault. I just have a problem, a disease, you know. Other people can drink and they're fine. And so, like, it slowly went away. Like, but nowadays, I've always gone to church since I've been out, since I've been in recovery. And my church, endearing, I love it to death, is not what most people see as organized religion. At least not the. I see my faith as living like Jesus says how to live, not what the Pope says or what whoever it may be, and like the Bishop of Methodism. But anyway, it's like I have friends there. We have a positive goal in mind as a community, and we enjoy each other's company. So that's my meeting. Like going to church once a week is my meeting. You know, and then over here, like the last year and a half when COVID hit, the guys in rehab were quarantined for like 3 months, so they had no visitors and no nothing. And then once they laxed off of that, a friend of mine that I went through the program with encouraged me to go back and start sponsoring people. And I had never sponsored anyone in the first 6 years of my recovery because I was like, I got enough problems of my own. But doing that, which is considered part of the 12th step, like giving back to others, has really kind of lit a fire in my heart for like recovery again. I started doing this like primary color artwork thing where it's just,
I love it.
It's like posterized, but it's on just red, yellow, and blue. So I did those, and I did a bunch of like, these are smaller ones down here, but I have like just like cartoon characters like Scooby, Arby, Shaggy, some Popeye, and so on and so forth. These pieces up here I actually did for my church, where it was like sayings from quotes from those people about religion. So Martin Luther King, Billy Graham, Mother Teresa, and Jimmy Carter. This is some other stuff. I started doing these. Like, these are on Masonite. But it's kind of, this is where I started doing more of a pop feel. But I did the little Cupid doll and Sluggo and Marilyn and Audrey Hepburn. The Frankenstein and the Bride, they glow in the dark. This is a cutout of the Crimson Ghost that I did. Actually, over there is an actual really cool piece I did on a palette.
I actually had written on my little cheat sheet paper here to ask you what was your favorite movie of all time, and I forgot that. But I literally imagined that your answer was going to be Clockwork Orange.
Yeah. Well, I love the theme of it. I love the fact that, well, I don't love the fact of the things that him and his friends did, but it's kind of being forced to be, he's forced to be good by government stimulation and drugs and stuff like that, and then he turns bad. But in the book, he becomes good again of his own accord, on his own, which I thought was really cool.
I'm not a criminal, your choice is seminal. I want you to stay true to what's right for you. No matter who or know what will others say. Just find your way and try to stay true.
Everything in here, for the most part, is either thrifted or created by myself. Actually, my wife did this little mural for me, and it's actually, the symbol of the shop is a circle with the AA and NA symbols combined.
Okay.
So it's like AA and NA, and that is my sacrament, is my recovery. But yeah, I mean, I upcycle things. This is a Mary statue I found that I started painting. I haven't finished yet. Framework, I did this little, the Sacred Heart. Up top here are famous tattooers from yesteryear, or sideshow performers. This is actually the oldest tattoo artist alive. She is like 101. She's from Cambodia.
Wow.
She actually hand pokes in like a small cannibal.
Pick and poke.
Yeah.
Oh.
She picks the actual needle of a thorn of an orange tree to tattoo you with. Yeah. She
Oh
picks
my
it. Yeah.
goodness.
But skateboard deck I did. This is actually an old sign from my original shop in St. Pete that an awesome sign painter made. This is one I did. But yeah, I mean, I did this cutout, this little guy. I made this is my first ever clay thing. And it's extremely heavy because I didn't use like air dry clay. So that next time I'll be using air dry.
Are you gonna get into some sculpting?
I do want to do some sculpting because I have bowling pins. And I want to like make their like faces come out of the bowling pin kind of thing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because I have a rat fink I did over there, but his face is just painted flat on it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that's an oil drum lid that I painted on. That little cutout. I did this mailbox.
I need a new mailbox.
This is actually, now when I first started being in recovery, and I first met my wife, this is actually a portrait of her from with Dia de los Muertos paint on her face. And this is our daughter, and I kind of did hers half. So it was kind of like she got into mommy's makeup kind of thing.
Okay.
Like she's playing with mommy's makeup. This is just another piece I did. I did all this. Like I did that. I did the OG Jesus, the Tampa. I made this cabinet. So I do everything. I want to get my hands dirty with stuff. Like if I don't know how to do the medium, I'm gonna know how to do the medium. That's on wood. This is my rat fin that I did, bowling pin. Go all the way around. But yeah, I want to like put clay on it and like build his nose to come out. And I actually bought fake nails from Dollar Tree to like implant as teeth, so that the teeth all come out different ways. So like I'm always like figuring things out. I'm always looking at ideas. If I see stuff, I think the only thing that's really bad about me is that I'm not a great supporter of the arts, because if I see it, I just think to myself, how I'm gonna make it myself. So I'll like, I can do that. My wife's always like, make one of these, you know?
So you don't buy art.
I do buy, well, I bought this print. This is from a guy, Big Joe Blocks in Tampa. He also did that red food dog over there. So I'm starting to buy art now. Now that my life is becoming more successful again, I'm supporting the arts.
Yeah.
But usually, and that's I think that's a tattoo artist thing, is we're like, one of us will draw a cool panther, and then another one of us will draw an even cooler panther. So it's like a one-uppance type thing, instead of being like, oh, I like your panther, I'm gonna buy your panther.
Right.
Or it's a trade thing, like we'll trade like tattoos, or we'll trade paintings or something.
Yeah.
So we didn't really like buy a lot. But I mean, I made that no liner sign. This is all just random craziness. You know, my addiction was cards.
Cards, yes. Oh,
My
speaking
card
of,
addict dice.
I've got them right here in my back pocket. I brought you these cards.
Oh.
So, have you ever heard of this?
No.
Queen. So this teenager, Mayan is her name. She was playing cards with her dad one day. I think she said she was 14 years old. And she started to think, why are the kings more valuable than the queens?
Right.
So she set out to make a deck of cards that is more diversified and equal. So instead of having kings, queens, and jacks, you have monarchs, duchess and duke, and princess and prince. And then, and so the first version of these cards, actually, this is the second version. So the first version, they were all white, and they all had long hair. And so she did like this crowdfunding thing for the first batch of them. And then when she got feedback, that, well, great, they're, they're not sexist any longer, but they're still not diverse. They're still not very diverse. So she redesigned the cards to be more diverse, and I think they're really cool and worth supporting. So she says, I have not played with them. This is the first batch. I bought a batch of 10, and this is the first ones, and I'm giving them to you. I've never played with them before, but she says that you can play any game that you can play with a regular deck of cards. You can play with those.
That's super cool.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Well, I've been saving empty cans to make this. I saw a guy named 1000 does those. But I did these. These would probably be at or Punk Rock Flea Market. Joey, Ramon. That's obviously Captain Spaulding. And this little tattoo sign I made. I mean, I make everything I can. I like it. I finally stopped going and picking shit up off the side of the road. Because I have enough stuff as it is. I actually have this is my shop and my studio, and we have another storage unit that has more stuff. It's not full, but it's part house and part all my stuff I haven't painted yet.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Are we gonna smoke a cigar and play some cards? Might have gotten it a little
a little bit red.